Let's open up this discussion and go to London, where we're joined by Sabah Al Mukhtar. He's the president of the Arab Lawyers Association. And in Baghdad, Ali Nashmi. He's a professor of international relations at Mustansiriya University. Gentlemen, thank you very much for joining us. Sabah Al Mukhtar, let me begin with you. These women, many of them sentenced to life in prison, many of them sentenced to death for being a part of Daesh and being a part of terrorizing Iraqi society. Were these convictions fair and just?
Well, obviously, we don't know the facts of the case. I don't know the facts of the case. However, there are criticism on the Iraqi process, both in terms of the legislature, the proceedings before the courts, and the sentencing. The Human Rights Council and the human rights organizations, Amnesty and the rest, have heavily and seriously and repeatedly criticized the Iraqi judiciary in its application of the law. The trials do not meet the international standards in terms of the representation of the accused by lawyers, in terms of the evidence which was presented, in terms of the due process is not there. It's being criticized heavily. On the legislature side, Iraq has the anti-terrorist law, which is, by all standards of legislation anywhere in the world, it's an unacceptably loose terminology. It's not a law that you can sentence people to death. 3, Iraq is actually probably the third highest country in the world that is putting people to death after China and Iran. And finally, when we look at the situation of these accused women, obviously we don't know the facts of it. However, to try and sentence one to death and other to other prison sentences, it shows a fear of injustice being done. And finally, I think these women, if they have not carried out arms, and I doubt that there were any evidence, but obviously I do not know, people should not be sentenced to death, even if they were part of Daesh.
Ali Nashmi, lots of question marks from Sabah Al Mukhtar regarding the entire process from the beginning to the middle to the end. Doesn't the man make a good point that we can't trust the Iraqi justice system in giving us fair justice when it comes to these women?
No, we cannot judging about this court and about this sentences or that decision, because this is not court, publicly court. We don't know what is the circumstances of this court and what's the evidence and what is the details. But I read something about this women, and I know some women, they are from Turkey and some from Germany and some from other countries. And the majority, they are widows for the fighters of the Daesh, ISIL. But I read something, and the speaker of this court said, and I asked many judges in Iraq, they said, some women, they said, our husband forces them, and some women say, they forces us, and they say they protect us or prevent us from our children and torture us, and they force us to come to Iraq. Those women, they are sent to the prison, something for 10 years and some of their life prison. But some women, as I read, they say they confess and they believe in the ideology of Daesh. For example, Linda of Germany and another woman from Turkey, they said we believe the ISIL Daesh, and they say we confess, we are carried open and we fight the Iraqi forces and we killed, as they say. Those women, they send to the death. But in the results, we cannot judging because we don't know all the details. But there is no lawyer for that woman. When the judge asked that woman, do you have lawyer? They said not. But the court, they put many Iraqi lawyers to defense of from this woman. But we don't know. We must read the details, and after that we can take very pictures or suitable pictures about these decisions.
Okay, so there's a bit of speculation going on here, but Sabah Al Mukhtar, in general, in principle, would you agree that someone is more likely to be a candidate for the death penalty if they come forward and say, listen, yes, I believed it, I went to fight in, I went to join the Islamic State, I went to live in Mosul, I wanted to live in the caliphate, and yes, I committed atrocities. If somebody actually admitted to that and being a part of Daesh, that under the Iraqi system, they are a fair candidate for the death penalty, as opposed to somebody who felt they were just duped and sucked into a process by an overbearing spouse?
Number one, in the first instance, if somebody believes in Daesh or believe in the Islamic State objectives, and even if they formally announce that they support the view and they formally say that we would fight and all this, this can never be a reason for anybody's death, whatever reason they have, whatever thoughts they have, because freedom of thought is not something that can be punished by a death sentence. This is number one. Number two, the admission by itself that if somebody says, yes, I did, if one of these women said, yes, I did fight and I killed 10 or 100 or 1, that is not sufficient for a death sentence. The accused is innocent until proven guilty. And the proof is not an admission alone. There should be sufficient evidence that shows that that person has actually, in fact, committed the crime. That is the only time that you can hang people on. Because if there is doubt, the doubt is transferred to the benefit for the accused. And in this instance, as I said, because we don't have the facts, and this is again one of the problems with the Iraqi judiciary,
right.
Clearly that trial was not public because the only thing we have is the announcement that they have been sentenced.
Yeah, Sabah, there have been some who have criticized the fact that everybody wants to take an extremely humane approach to Daesh widows. And they're saying, what about the agency of these women themselves? Since there have been reports to show that, for example, some of these women have been integral to the raping and the persecution of Yazidi girls, for example, right? So again, let me give you a variation of my last question. If there is proof that a woman who was a part of Daesh living in Mosul or Tal Afar or even across the border in Syria and Raqqa and so on, if there is proof that they were actively involved in committing atrocities for Daesh, would you support the death penalty against them?
Not at all. I'm against the death penalty, capital penalty for any crime, including terrorism and Daesh and what have you, because it's contrary to the principle of the sanctity of human life. It is contrary to Islam as a religion. It's even in Islam, when there are the had, where you can kill people, there are so many restrictions and so many obstacles that almost it is difficult to actually put somebody to death, even under Islamic rules.
Okay, Ali and Nashmi, I want to give you something that came from a senior Iraqi counterterrorism judge to Human Rights Watch. I want you to have a little listen to this. I'm going to read it out to you. He said, I had a case yesterday of an ISIS cook, and I have recommended giving him the death penalty. How could the ISIS or Daesh fighter have executed someone if he had not been fed a good meal the night before? So once again, a senior counterterrorism judge, the type of judge that would have been doling out punishment when it came to these particular cases, saying, well, if you fed Daesh, clearly you're involved in Daesh atrocities, we give you the death penalty. Is that the sort of system you want to defend, Ali?
My God.
No, I think there is, I know, there is many victims in any kind of the war, and especially in the civil war. Many victims, they are the relatives with that fighters. and somebody will accuse somebody and some lies against somebody. And I know it's not everything is clear, especially in the situation in Iraq. In order that, yes, we can say some victim, yeah, in this case, and it's very important for the Iraqi court to be very carefully to take this kind of information if they want others to respect their decision. And I think it's very important, but I don't know, is that right or not? They sent somebody to death because he cooked to the Daesh. I don't know. I didn't heard somebody, but I know everybody who carry weapon and who fighting against the Iraqi soldiers or the Iraqi forces, I think they are sent to the death. And even those people, they didn't achieve it. They did because they still in the prisons. Somebody from 15 years, they still in the prisons. In order that I said some people of those crime or criminals, they say return to the life because somebody will accuse and somebody will interfere in the case of like Saudi Arabia or some governments from Turkey or Germany or that. But if you achieved it, I think we cannot say this is justice or this is right with their decision.
Sabah Al Mukhtar, tell me why you're shaking your head.
Yeah, this judge, if this is what he said, this is a vivid example of the unfairness of the judiciary system of Iraq. If there is a judge who says that he's going to sentence a man to prison because he sentence him to death because he has fed a Daesh fighter, God help us and help all the Iraqis and those who are accused before the judiciary there.
Yeah, Sabah Al Mukhtar, what about this idea that the Iraqi people want to see vengeance? They've suffered a lot under this group. This group almost swallowed up half of their country. They did terrible things to them. And they want to see militant justice meted out against the people who did these unspeakable things to them and the people associated with them. There's an element of populism here. Does that sit uncomfortably with you?
Exactly. This is where things go wrong. Justice is fairness. It is not getting vengeance, because this is an animal instinct which we all have. But the systems of justice prevents the vengeance. And secondly, if there is a vengeance to be taken, you can take it on the fighters who have killed, but you don't go and kill their wives or children or family. And not only that, those in Iraq who have suffered are not only the victims of Daesh and ISIS. The government and the militias have killed many more people than ISIS did. The militias, which the government support, has destroyed 8 major cities in Iraq and made its population, all of them are displaced refugees. And that is not justice.
Ali, after everything we've heard here, is it even possible for Iraq to have reconciliation and a sense of peace in the immediate future?
Yes, I believe, because the people in the places, they saw the war, the civil war, and they saw what is Daesh, and whereas the sectism and the radicalism, what the end of that radicalism. They destroyed their cities, and they killed their friend and their neighbor, and so they lost the lovers, and they lost their husbands and the father and mother. In order that that people, they understand the lesson. And I think the Iraqi people, they understand the lesson from that civil war. And I think that will be very good base, very good ground to reconciliation in the future, because both sides saw the end of that kind of sectarianism. In order that, yes, I believe, but it's that need the government do harder and do work, they change their policy and return the infrastructure in their places. After that, we must return to stay, to sit on that basis and return to understand and to study what happened, why that happened, and what is the reason. I think in the future, the Iraqi people, they will do that.
Okay, so Sabah Al Mukhtar, we've seen the Iraqi government try to get donor money in. It's asking for billions of dollars to rebuild the country physically. But what about the sectarianism, the extremism, the long memories of pain and trouble? Whether you were a Shia who was affected by Sunni violence or a Sunni affected by Shia violence and so on, is Iraq ready and does it have the right leadership to lead it down the path of reconciliation, in your opinion?
No, unfortunately, the answer is no, because there are all the requirements for reconstruction do not exist. There is corruption in the government, there is sectarianism, there is nepotism. The Iraq is at the bottom of Transparency International. The government which went to Kuwait to try and raise money, I've seen the list of the projects which the government has announced. Not a single project is in the destroyed area. Therefore, it is not a reconstruction. It is an attempt to get investment in Iraq, and they have failed in doing that simply because the people who were going to offer the money wanted conditions that are acceptable, that is safety and security and proper government, do not exist. So, and this is even how the Vice President Ayad Allawi in Iraq has described this attempt. So I don't think we are heading that way, unfortunately. The suffering of the Iraqi people looks like it's going to continue for a little while yet.
Okay, so one person more optimistic and one more pessimistic. Gentlemen, unfortunately, I have to move on. But I do thank you both for joining us here on the Newsmakers, Sabah Al Mukhtar and Ali Nashmi. Thanks again.